And we're live for another episode of Subscription Radio. And today we have a special guest, Taja Dockendorf, the founder of Pulp Wire, which is a CPG and cannabis focused brand strategy, packaging design firm, with creative being the heart of it. And I want to focus on that part in particular because on the show we've had a lot of operators, like VPs of growth, traditional VCs in CPG, but part of what was really appealing about getting Taja on the show was talking more about from the creative and brand and strategy side, because she's been in this business for a really long time and they work with a range of awesome brands. And the small worldness here is that I'm from Maine, and Pulp and Wire is based in Maine, and so these brands like Allagash I'm familiar with, and so I think really looking forward to this conversation. And I don't know, Taja.
No, I'm excited to be here, Ben. Thank you. As a fellow Mainer and beer lover of Allagash.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you. And so I think there were a few topics we were saying that we thought would be interesting to go over. But before we get into that, you want to just give us a little bit of a background of yourself, the agency, maybe give a little bit of context around the type of work that you're doing specifically with brands, and how much of that is on we'll call it more the traditional branding and strategy side, and how has that changed with everything that's happening around subscriptions, membership, and the evolution of CPG?
Happy to. So
Awesome.
I founded the company about 18 years ago, coming out of the agency side, and my background is initially an industrial designer, so everything for me is tactile and everything is an experience. I pivoted towards graphic design, and then, like I said, 18 years ago, founded the company after coming out of the agency side, New York and Boston, and realizing what I wanted to be as a leader in the space, but also as a designer, how I wanted to approach projects. So over the last 18 years, there are now 20 of us in Portland, Maine, a few remote as well in different cities. And our focus isn't just on creative. It's about building the roadmap for brands specifically in the CPG space, in the natural and organic, cannabis, food and beverage. We do a lot, but we have a very narrow focus, which makes it easy to be able to really help those brands and understand what they're going through. Everything from naming, in some cases flavor development, and how we're going to help them bring a whole new product to market. Sometimes they don't even know what their name is going to be, but building that foundation. Then through creative, branding, marketing, the packaging, the look and feel, the experience, into unboxing experiences, web, how it all comes together is that middle creative piece. And that is really my background and my love. And then that second piece is you can have the best foundational roadmap and the most beautiful creative, but if you do not know how to drive your product to market successfully, you're going to die. And that is a big part of what we saw over COVID too, is that people had to pivot who were used to being on shelves onto the digital side. But our last piece is digital marketing. So content creation, social media, how do we take those brands? How do we make them viable? How do we make them noticed? How do we get them other people excited about them, cross promotions with other brands, and get them out to market successfully? But in all of that, I invest in some really cool brands that I see come across our plate, and as an all-female founded company and 95% female on our team, which was not on purpose. It was really, as I told someone earlier today, it was really about the right people showing up at the right time for the right job. We're thrilled with what we do. I think that passion will come across as we start talking, but I love what I do, but I love problem solving. And that's really where I'm well suited and seated within the creative space as creative director over the company, is helping solve the problems for a lot of these CPG brands.
Got it. And can you also kind of tell us a bit like the composition of your team? Is it predominantly design? Is it account? Like, do you have engineers in-house? Do you work with agencies or work with like dev shops?
Yeah, so we have programmers in-house.
Okay.
We have a whole creative team with 3 design directors and designers underneath them, 3 account managers, strategist, digital strategist, and then content creators and copywriters. So we're really kind of well balanced. It's not just design heavy with account managers and then we source everything out. We do everything in-house.
Got it. Interesting. All right. Well, so you talk us a little bit about like you were speaking to like how COVID had changed.
Yes.
Going from shelves to into direct to home. I mean, let's. I don't know if there was anything specific you wanted to jump into around that.
Oh, there's a lot I can speak to here. I mean, COVID changed everything for everyone in so many so many facets. I mean, we could talk business and how it changed my leadership style completely, having to send everyone remote and how we navigated that very quickly. But really, it wasn't just about navigating your own team, it's navigating your clients. As I saw, there were a lot of agencies that kind of went very much internal and there was a lot of fear, naturally. For us, it was, how are we going to keep everyone alive in the sense of their business, not just physically? And how are we going to keep those brands growing and innovating and being excited about the future, not worrying about the present at the moment? So for a lot of our brands, they were online already. And we work with some wonderful name brands, as you mentioned, Allagash, but also some large national brands as well in the CPG space. So they were in brick and mortar, and they were online. And the pivot was, we need to move everything to online. We need to incentivize. We need to get people excited about this. We need them to feel comfortable with your brand because they're at a state of uncertainty and uncomfort anyway with COVID. So how do we get you online and feeling as though you're a valued partner? You can get them product quickly. They can stock their pantries. They don't have to worry about food insecurity during this time and create a relationship. It was actually beautiful because before, bigger brands always took market share. When all of this happened, it was like everyone was on the same playing field. All of a sudden, kind of everything shut down to zero. And it was a matter of everyone kind of coming back up and saying who could be present and who could be the most mindful brand to serve the consumer's needs and who had, product that they were able to get out quickly to their consumers. And that's where these smaller brands really won there and grew their brands during this time too. It's how they showed up.
And were most or all of these brands, they already all have like a direct-to-consumer digital
they did.
line of business? They did, okay.
Yeah, so a lot of them already had a website. Yeah. They were not just, brick and mortar, which was smart.
Got it. And so can you even sort of talk through what were some of the things you did? Because I think I'd like to keep it we'll keep it into the interesting stories, right? Or the unexpected things that you learned that, because I think for most of us, COVID obviously changed everything, and anyone who works in CPG is probably pretty familiar with the obvious ways that brands have had to adjust and sell direct to consumer. But I think what did the direct to consumer? Did the business models change? What?
I think they did.
Okay.
It's so hard. I mean, everyone was a little bit different, but we saw, more investment into ad purchasing for visibility, more time in social media because their teams were more dispersed. There was more camaraderie also on the social media side where people wanting to support each other so brands could show up differently. But now fast forward 2 years, look at where we are with TikTok and selling on TikTok and influencers again. Things have changed so much. So I'd say at the onset, it was social media. It was staying connected. It was showing that you had product that was viable for people to order and get in their home and feel safe and secure. But now, as things are changing again, it's about social media. And I was just reading something about how, the new algorithm and for Instagram is terrible for CPG brands. So it's okay, well, that beauty that we used to love for trying to get product out there is really maybe not the best vehicle any longer. And now what is the right vehicle? And that is, again, social media. But one thing I know we want to talk about, too, it's also how you show up in the home. Right. So with all of this direct-to-consumer, the biggest learning that we found is it's not just being able to ship your product to the customer because they're going to have it in their home, but it's the CPG experience and the consumer experience of when it hits the doorstep all the way through consumption. What does that look like? And that is where you can have a whole new relationship with the consumer one-on-one, whereas brick and mortar, you are one of millions in that store. And I think that's the beautiful thing that came out of it is people are really aware of the experience now that customers are getting.
Got it. And so I'm curious, of the experiences you've seen, and do you personally buy, whether it's on a subscription basis or deliver direct to your home? What are some of those experiences that you've had?
I'm the worst.
You're the worst? Yeah. Okay.
I'm not allowed to grocery shop because I am so driven by shiny objects and, this is cool. And what's this? And this looks pretty. I don't even know what it is. So I can rack up a pretty large grocery tab and then have nothing to show for it very quickly. But I do test a lot of consumer experiences because I like to see how other brands are showing up. Because a big part of what we do for CPG brands when we're thinking about packaging, it's the tangible pieces. So kind of pulling from my background in the industrial design, it is a full 360. It's feel, ultimately it's taste, but it's also touch. It's smell, it's everything that's fully immersive of that brand. That is what makes you either love or hate a brand. So when you're shopping, I think you've got to what is it, second grade reading level and a 2-second attention span, something along those lines.
Yeah.
You're not thinking clearly. You are thinking based on instinct. So it is color. It is quick hit, visuals. But then when you're in your home and you've chosen to purchase something online, that changes. Your experience with the psychology of that CPG brand changes. You can educate so much more. You can have QR codes that lead to whole landing pages now. There's, interactivity that can happen. There's, again, that touch and that feel and that unboxing and that, there's tons of money made by YouTubers on just unboxing things.
Like 12-year-olds who get paid millions to unbox.
If only I had known.
My goodness.
Just for opening toys. But it is just like that. You had that same, and I think that's why people love watching those videos. You get that same excitement when you get to open something that's new, and it's a bit of a surprise. There's a magic moment, and that's where I think brands can really push further with those unboxing and those home delivery pieces, that those magic moments and that moments of kind of surprise and delight. When you know what you ordered, but what if there was something a little extra in there, something you weren't expecting, something that says, oh, this is cool. Those are the shareable moments that are not only going to engage the consumer where they are in their home, help them want to read and learn more, but that's what's going to be shared on social media too.
Got it. So what are some examples of that?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I get so many boxes in my home. It can be anything from like stickers to, a coupon card or a free, there's a lot of referral friend things on there too. Sometimes it's just a little value add or a sample of another brand that you've collaborated with. I've seen that too. I think it was the early days of Rue La La. They used to send through samples, kind of like what you would get from like a Birchbox sample in it as like, hey, we think you might like this brand. And granted, that wasn't a subscription, but it was an opportunity to get to learn about new products that you weren't expecting to know about. So it's those moments. It could be a piece of merch. Like if you're on a subscription and your fifth box has a t-shirt in it, or your fifth box has a little something of value that is different, or I don't know, it could be a mantra. It could be, a zine that you can subscribe to or something, just something that gives you a more value add than what you were expecting.
Got it. Yeah. I was just thinking, I wish.
I was going to say, is there anything that you've gotten in a subscription box that you've gotten like, oh, this is awesome?
Well, this is actually completely unrelated, and not to go on a tangent, but this is a very brief tangent. Someone has to, and I'm willing to give you this idea. Someone should put fortune cookies in beer. Not the cookie part, but the fortune.
I was going to say soggy, but interesting.
No, because I don't even particularly like Chinese food, but one of the weird things about receiving like Chinese food, and it's like any Chinese food, right? Like there's this cultural, and I don't want to say it's cultural, it might be cultural, of getting a fortune cookie and reading the fortune, even if it's from the most derivative chain. And it's actually ironic. I have an entire box of every fortune cookie that I've ever gotten. Again, not the cookie.
Well, you've never opened them? It's literally the fortune cookie in the bag.
I have I eat the cookie, and then I keep the fortune.
Okay.
I even have a spreadsheet of all my fortunes in Evernote.
Wow.
Wait, let me quickly say. Yeah, so I actually have all my fortunes.
So on a day when you're just feeling like I need a pick-me-up, do you just reach in there and pull one out?
Yeah, no, and I even have a couple in front of my desk, like ones that actually resonated like at different points in my life.
It's amazing. They're like spirit animal cards for you. You just pull one out. It gives you the inspiration for the day.
Yeah, the weird thing about it is it's like from P.F. Chang's, right? Where like it's not like, but I was just thinking it'd be really cool for a brand to do fortune cookie. Not the cookie. Could be the cookie. But I was thinking about beer. I was thinking about something where you drink it, and if you could create some sort of mystique around, there's some sort of reason you'd believe that like a shaman had blessed this beer so that there was some sort of reason that the fortune would be relevant to you. Not exactly an NFT, but what you got me thinking of is what are examples of
QR code on there for an NFT. Right. You never know.
No, but there's something really interesting, and I think it's
those are the Easter eggs. Those are those moments of surprise and delight. that I love. And I love working that into packaging too. So it could be just something that you weren't expecting on the opening flap of a box, or when you actually undo the box, what does it have? Like, it could be a joke, or is there something beautiful on the inside, or what can that box turn into that you weren't expecting? I mean, I've seen, there are some, pet food companies, and you get the box and you can turn the box into a cat house when you're done with it. And those are just like those moments of, that was cool. Yeah. This will last 5 minutes while I put it together. My cat will tear it apart, but good for you, because you captivated me and kept me engaged with your brand longer than I expected to be. So it's like fortune cookies. Look at how engaged you are with those fortunes.
No, it's well, what you just got me thinking about around the cat house, though, which goes back to one of the unique challenges around one of the things we were talking about before the show was, if you have a subscription to a gym membership and you don't show up, you'll keep paying for it, and that's fine. There's no actual cost to you, but because these are physical products, and it's almost like the cat house is awesome, but there's only so many there's only so much room for cat houses in my New York City apartment. And so
every subscription box is hard to have a new cat house.
Well, so and I wonder about that. And
they should really be litter boxes, to be totally honest. It should be a convertible litter box, and every month you throw that thing out.
That's actually a really interesting idea.
We should sell that to someone. We'll come up with
that. No, but going back to you were talking about like the sort of affinity that people have to tangible objects, and you were talking about like your background, like industrial design. How do you design experiences where, on one hand, the brand obviously wants you to continue to buy or consume more product, but balancing that with the fact that there's only so much cupboard space that someone has, and so I'm sort of asking a question without any sort of answer. It's more just an observation and something that
Well, no, it's a good question. I don't know if I have a direct answer, but it's also what is tough with subscriptions and brands, especially those who have smaller catalogs of product. Say they've got 6 different SKUs and you're on a subscription, you better love that product because you're going to be getting it every month. At what point do you get tired of that product? So at what point are you really utilizing a subscription program to learn about your customers? So I mean, and this is there's different subscriptions out there, but you really want them to tell you, okay, this person, Ben has ordered X these chips 5 times now over the last 5 months. Warning, he might be getting he either loves them a lot and he would be a great ambassador and we should send him something, or he might be getting tired of them. And at that point, it's kind of like, where in their process can you automate? Throw in a bag of this flavor. Let's diversify things a little bit as a free gimme, because you've obviously shown your loyalty 6 times over. That's huge. And they don't want you to drop off. But what moment can they be like, personalize it to you versus just shooting out another order? And I mean, that's different AI and the kind of listening tools and, watching for the consumer behavior and how many times they've ordered. But there are subscription programs out there that tell you the repeat buy and what they've been buying and how many times. It's just paying attention to it and bringing a personal side of humanity, saying, wow, he really loves that product. What can we do to get him hooked onto either another SKU or to know that we value him as a consumer? And I think those are the moments that you can make or break a relationship with a brand. Because I think as we were talking about the gym subscription, that's up to me to go. That's not up to the brand to keep me going. That's all on me. Whereas the other subscriptions, that is on the brand to keep you interested every single month so that you continue to give them your hard-earned money. And to do that, they have to learn about each customer almost on an individual level. And there's, again, software out there to do that. But pay attention to it.
Well, and so can you maybe tell us a little bit around how do you, what are some specific ways, or even your approach to getting to understand how to, I don't want to just say understand the consumer, but once you have that information, say, yes, you see that someone's purchased multiple times, from a execution level, how has that actually been incorporated into one of the brands you work with? I
would say it's trial and error. I mean, because that's how you're going to learn. All right, we have 6 customers who have bought this product this many times. Let's engage them let's give them something. Let's give them a value add. Let's give them a little something that says we care. And it's not going to affect your bottom line all that much. But what will affect your bottom lines if you lose them as a subscription customer. So it's really kind of looking at setting your benchmarks, what defines a customer that is of value, kind of like an A, B, and C customer. An A customer is that bought more than like 6 months to a year. What does a B customer look like, and a C customer? And then being able to kind of put those into different buckets and categories and saying, well, when they reach this level, it's like reward points almost, but without putting the onus on the customer to then cash in those rewards or those points. Those things kind of drive me nuts because it's just kind of like a false promise. Instead, looking at those A, B, and C customers and then saying, okay, well, they've just reached B status or A status. What do we do for them? How do we congratulate them? How many do we have? And do we have someone on the team that can actually go and look at their social media? Are they on TikTok? How big of an ambassador are they for us? And a lot of that you can see if you've got a social media manager. They'll be able to see mentions and consumers and customers who have, spoken about your brand. It's mapping all of that together to get that visibility. So it's a lot of psychology, and it is some busy work and some trial and error, but it really is bucketing your customer base and looking to see who your most valuable customers are, and then what do they look like? Because if you know your A people and their demographic, where they're located, what their favorite SKUs are, there is so much power in those metrics. Because now you can actually target customers just like them on social media and advertising too. But again, there's no perfect solution. It's trial and error also. But when you've got metrics, it's finding ways to use it effectively.
I mean, can you give me maybe some examples of things that worked, that flopped, like things that you had tried?
Oh my God, so many things flop.
Yeah. Anything absurd that you thought would work, that you were convinced would work, but just simply did not? And do you have any insight as to why it didn't work?
That's a great question. Not off the top of my head that I can think of. I'm trying to think of like a really good one that just failed. I mean, as I like to say, the path to hell is paved with good intentions. Sometimes, you really think it's going to take off, and we've got this campaign we're going to do, and we hope people love it, and then like no one shows up for it. Sometimes the biggest flops happen with timing and maybe too small of a market set, or not understanding the markets, or not maybe doing enough consumer testing in advance. But no real example of like a total fail. But if I think of one, I will definitely let you know, and we can abridge this podcast.
Well, because I'm trying to think, because one of the things that I'm trying to make sure that, like, when we're talking about, even just like with all of your experience and like all the things you've learned, like, what are some of the ways from for anyone listening who has a brand, say they're doing several $1 million a year, they're not trying to get their brand started. What they are doing is trying to get to the next level. And I think that if I were to characterize a lot of these brands, it's, at a certain point, whether it's due to like costs of acquisition going up, they are, they're sort of like, it's easier today to get to, I've heard the number like 5 million a year in revenue. Like to go from 0 to 5 million is, I don't want to basically say like it's easy. But then you stagnate, and so oftentimes it's like there's these different plateaus, just as there would be in growth in general. It's like, if you were to characterize, have you worked with any brands that were sort of at that point where it's not that they'd gotten to a stage of growth and you needed to help them break through to that next step? And was it largely an issue of, again, without speaking too general, because when we speak generally, it can be sort of like so general it's not helpful or useful. But like, is it typically an issue of retention, driving repeat purchase, incorporating something like subscriptions?
So this might actually go back to more like the business side, to be totally honest, because that's where it sometimes doesn't have anything to do with the subscriptions or the buyers. It has to do with the founders of the company. And this is where when you reach that, I would say, over 5 million, more like 5 to 20 million. You have owners that have built this company. It's their baby. They are sometimes really, it's hard for them to step out of the way and to trust other people to help build the business. And that is actually where I see the most failure. It is trusting. It's like they have to micromanage every piece versus understanding, and this is what I work with brands on, is know what you're good at. Know what your strengths are. Focus on those strengths. Don't try and own every single aspect of your social media. Delegate that out. Don't try and own every single step of how your packaging is going to look. Trust the experts. And it really is trust in the team, because you've grown to this level and you need more team in order to execute properly and to grow further. But if you don't trust your partners, you're not going to go anywhere. And that, I mean, beyond the subscription side, honestly, that is where I see the biggest the walls. I won't say failures, but that's the biggest roadblocks that I do see, is their inability to move forward because they are so close to the process and they can't move up to that next level. I've seen that with brands just white knuckling their social media. Like, they need to, and of course it should be in their voice and it should be authentic, but they need a team they can trust, but they have to micromanage every single aspect of it. So ultimately they get frustrated and then they're not moving forward, but they're not innovating on their brand, which is exactly what they should be doing. So when you get to that level, it's kind of like, well, I've got 5 SKUs and that's all we can do, but you should always be thinking about that next product. What is that next thing you're going to offer? What's that next exciting, shiny object that you're going to give your customers? And to do that, owners of these companies, to think that way, need to get out of the everyday minutia. And it's just because we work with so many startups that are at that point, or middleweight startups, and even the bigger companies. The bigger companies have it figured out a bit differently. But it's those little guys that, those are their biggest stumbling points, that they can't get out of their own way to really figure out their subscriptions or to look at their A, B, and C clients, because they're too busy trying to be everything to everyone in that company.
I'm curious, when you're talking about the companies that are at, because 5 to 20 is a pretty big range, right?
I would probably, it could be more like the 20 to 30 million mark, to be honest, because I've seen some of those where they're still, owners are holding on tight, and it's lovely, and they should be owning, they should be overseeing everything, but you shouldn't be doing everything at that point.
Like, I'm curious, like, at that scale in your experience, like, how many people work at the company? Because my assumption is, to get to that point, they have to be they're obviously doing some level of delegation. They have a senior team.
They could have marketing managers, but even still, it's that level of trust. And I think it is hard when you founded the company and you brought it up and you want everyone to think like you do. And unfortunately, not everyone's going to think like you do.
Wait for the best.
Yeah.
Well, I am curious.
It's part of the psychology of the design we also bring, is looking at the team and saying, okay, what is happening and how can we help you be successful when they get to their sales team? Because those are all things I like to look at too. The packaging and the look and the feel is amazing. It's just as important as what's inside that package, because that's how you're going to get the repeat buy. But it's also, what's the management look like that's getting it out to market successfully?
Well, you just made me think of something else when you were talking about like the different brands you've been working with. I think one question that came to mind to me, and I'm on the other side of it because my background's as an engineer, and so typically what I found is when I'm working with brands, or we're working with brands, some of them have a couple in-house engineers, typically more on the junior level, maybe a senior engineer, but they're not tech companies. And I'm curious, when does a brand, like when a brand approaches you, why is it because they haven't built out creative and strategy in-house? Like, of all the different services that Pulp and Wire offer, why would a brand work with you as opposed, and is that representative of them not having those skills in-house? Like, when does it make sense? And like, when are there certain moments that a brand that maybe even has it in-house will approach you? That's
a great question. Because we work with brands of all sizes, when you get up into those bigger, $100 million brands, they have marketing teams, but their marketing teams can only do so much. So sometimes we're brought in as a complementary agency to help with creative and to come up with fresh ideas that then they can run with internally. So if they've got a new product or they've got a new SKU or they just want to redesign a line, they will bring us on board to bring fresh energy to their team and collaborate with them. Then there's the other side of those brands that are startups, and they need to figure out their name and who they're going to be in market and who they're going to talk to and what their competition really is in the space and what does the shelf look like. And then those are the smaller ones where we can be brought in on strategy and kind of take them through the full process. We have others that jump right in on the digital content side. Say, we just need help creating beautiful content for our brands and then helping to push it to market. Or, we'll come up with the copy, create, or we'll do everything kind of soup to nuts on the digital side. So we have brands that jump in at all different points, but they all have different needs dependent upon their team. Some don't even have a creative arm to the company, or they might have a marketing manager, but then we're brought in to work closely with the marketing manager, or we're working directly with the founder.
Got it.
So each is a little bit different depending on the scale. I have a soft spot for the startups, which gets me into trouble. But I love seeing them grow and see us growing them to that $5 million point and then to that $20 million point, and then doing it all over again. So sometimes we'll build a beautiful brand and it's great for 3 or 4 years, and then we need to rethink it because the market's changed. And that's even fun to be able to rework those brands with fresh energy, knowing where they came from and where they can go.
And do you typically work, and maybe the answer depends on the stage of the company, but with the brands you work with, are you typically working with them on projects, like they have a specific initiative, or like, again, like I think so if it's an early stage company, you're coming in and helping figure out their messaging and branding, positioning, whatnot. I guess I'm thinking more of how many of your engagements are sort of like over like a set period of time versus almost like on retainer, where you're effectively an extension of their team or like the creative team. I
would say we're about 25% retainer, 75% project-based, but a lot of our project-based turned into retainer anyway. It's dependent upon the product line, what they need for that, what we're creating for them. When we get to the digital side and social media management and things like that, that's definitely much more retainer because we're doing it every month and creating that content. But then we've got brands who have creative retainers because they're constantly innovating and they want to know that we're here for them whenever they need us, and we just jump right into it. And then there's also project-based. But you had mentioned strategy and brands coming to us with strategy. I love that. I love it when they have their own roadmap that we can jump into and sink our teeth into and really kind of dissect and see what's working and not working, and then help them build on that just as much as I love building the strategies for them. So there's no right or wrong. That we don't have to have ownership over every piece. And I think that is what kind of makes us a little bit different, is come to the table with what you've got. We're going to blow it all. Let's look at all of it. Let's see what's working. And we're going to use what is there that is the most impactful versus having to have our own process and tear everything apart.
When you first work with a brand, like what are some of the questions you first ask them? And like, going back to like getting to know their customer, how much of that is, firsthand research versus you guys doing research? Like, what is that initial sort of, we'll call it like, initiation by fire? Like, how do you approach getting?
I hate to say it depends on budget. And how deep we're digging. I love to always hear what they think their consumer audience is. And then I like to validate that. And I like to look at if it's, Google Analytics, what's happening on their social media platforms. I like to look at everything. Where I have metrics, let's look at it. And then listening tools are also really helpful to understand where they're at within their space. And then looking at what's happening within the trends market, what's growing in that space also, and what's resonating well with different audiences, if it's Gen Z or Gen X, or millennials. All of that we kind of need to unpack, and then understanding the product, because they might think this is a great Gen Z product, and it's like, actually, we should be marketing boomers because of what this is. So it's really helping them look at the product and look at where their audience is presently and where their future audience might also be. So it could be, hey, we're looking at boomers, but we're also looking at Gen Xers too, because they're going to be there next.
Right. I was thinking, like, I don't want to jump into cannabis, but it was one of those things that
that's literally a whole different ball of wax.
Well, I was going to say, because I would imagine, like, within D2C, cannabis is a whole nother game because you're limited around advertising. I don't even think you can do any advertising on Facebook.
You can. Yeah. It's CBD and topicals you can do, but even still, it's a little bit tricky. So there's a few out there who are doing it well, and there's others that just get shut down and have their accounts taken down constantly.
Right.
But when you get into, THC products, you can't do any advertising. But that's a totally different target too, because then we're dealing with dispensaries. And how do you stand out? So it's like your own special grocery store with these brands that are crazy, because it's the Wild West in the cannabis space. So how do you really speak to the consumer when you're in that store, really with the bud tender, because they need to understand your product, because they're the ones usually suggesting the best product for the consumer. And you see some that are super medically driven. You see others that are just totally out there and crazy off the wall. You see some that are trends driven, super 90s looking. It really comes down, it's like having a personal shopper when you go into a dispensary. And that's where you want to make sure that your product has been properly educated on. So with that bud tender, so that they know what to suggest. But yeah, it's a totally different world there. It's like anything goes. which is pretty cool. It's a fun space to design in.
Well, and I would imagine.
Well, I should say anything goes with compliance.
With compliance.
A thick blanket of compliance thrown on top of that.
I was just thinking, if I were to think of any segment of the market that would have some fascinating off-the-wall ideas around how to make a product experience really special, I would think of that. I would think of that segment of the market. And is there anything that you've seen?
I would say some of the coolest CPG packaging.
Yeah, so I mean that's packaging.
The coolest CPG packaging I've seen has come out of the cannabis space.
Yeah.
Yep. It's funky, and it's I mean, even there's a few different brands in particular that just have these crazy opening and unboxing experiences to them that, I mean, by the time you get to the product, it's basically nothing, but you're almost buying the experience of getting to the product,
right? Which
I think is a fascinating, again, like change. Well, actually, it kind of brings back to subscriptions and unboxing at home. At the end of the day, you're buying the experience of and the ease of convenience, but that opportunity that you're excited when you know it's going to hit your door.
Got it.
You know, and I do we do like some of the snack boxes here in the office. One thing I do like about that subscription, which has allowed me to keep going with it, is my right to change what I want. And I think I've seen that too in some of the clothing subscriptions too, like Trunk Club. Instead of just saying, here's what you're getting, you actually have a voice, and it allows you to pick, you know, every month, oh, I actually don't like that. I like this. I want to switch this out. I want to do that. So it becomes a shopping experience versus a redundant process.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the challenge is if you have limited SKUs,
makes it harder.
It makes it harder. Right.
But then there's like that's when you've got these online markets also that have multiple SKUs, and you're seeing more, snack box companies coming out with an aggregate of all these different products. So then again, it's with those snack box companies, how do you create that subscription ongoing and giving them variety, and all these little brands that maybe have smaller portfolios or smaller catalogs getting in with those bigger boxes to get their product out there. I mean, that was the other boom that we saw too in the last couple of years, is all these snack boxes, which I think is awesome. It brings it right into the home and gives you variety. Yeah,
I mean, it's interesting because there's a company called Co-op, although they just rebranded, and I don't recall what their new name is. Are you familiar with Co-op?
No, what is Co-op?
So Co-op effectively is so if you're a shopper and you buy from, if you buy from a brand, I was going to say Allagash, but you can't buy that online. But if you were to go and buy from an e-commerce store, on the thank you page, it effectively would say, here are complementary products from other brands that you might be interested in buying. And so effectively, it's an affiliate marketing referral program where the idea is, someone has just bought something. They're probably in a heightened sense to be open to discovering something else to purchase. And so Co-op, and I think the bigger vision there is actually probably more around partnership and bundling, where the idea that, because I was going back to thinking of if you only have a few SKUs, being able to effectively bundle and package your product with other complementary products. The challenge there, because that was an idea that some friends and I had thrown around a while ago, is a lot of brands are very protective of the customer experience, and they don't want to be bundled with or sharing lists of their customers, because who knows how that could reflect on them since they don't have control over the customer experience. But I have been seeing more and more of that, just as a way where if you have limited SKUs, what are ways for you to continue to provide variety. In that case, it's not so much variety, but I guess it's almost like another revenue stream. But it's actually more that it's like a co-op, I guess, where if you're pushing your customers, if you are showing your other people's brands to your brands, you're also getting exposed to the customers of other brands. So it's really also, the benefit for you is you're acquiring new customers who are probably within your target segment. So rather than doing Facebook advertising or other paid acquisition, you're effectively able to potentially acquire customers through another channel.
It's great visibility. And honestly, at the end of the day, that's what you want. And to not feel like your brand is so precious that if you're co-oping with somebody else, that it's going to take away from your revenue share. It's not. I mean, if you've got a great product and they're buying it, they're going to know it's a great product and they're going to buy you again. And I think that's the one thing we need to remember, is that the product needs to be just as good inside that box or can as it looks on the outside. And you need to understand what your consumer is looking for and not trying to show them a beautiful design that looks the opposite of what they're actually getting. So I think there's still, we are such a visual first, breed. We like things that look good, but we also need to make sure that they tie in properly to what the actual product is. So you're not, again, doing a bait and switch.
Right.
Because I've seen that on a lot of brands and this should taste like this based on the color and the illustration and how it looks. And then you're like, that's not even close.
Yeah. Well, and so you're talking about the physical product, and one of the themes that we had talked about was, there's the tangible experience of the brand, from the packaging to the opening experience. Let's talk a little bit around the innovation or pockets of innovation, whether that's NFTs or maybe even just interesting creative loyalty programs. What's caught your eye? What are things that you're thinking about in terms of ways, without just, you already mentioned giving free gifts, but I guess I'm thinking more in terms of the intangibles, whether that's through content. Again, I'm trying to think of most of us as consumers, everyone's fighting for our attention. Now, do I want to be getting a newsletter from every single, food and beverage company that I subscribe to? Probably not. But if there's, but again, this is, I'm trying to think outside of my own experience and think through what are ways for brands to provide intangible benefits that are actually truly meaningful and not just spam, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and I think no, it's a good point, because there's so much noise that's happened over the last couple of years with e-blasts and just everything kind of pinging and dinging at us constantly between, social media and Zoom and our email and e-blasts and everything else. But I do think what is fascinating, and I don't know if I fully understand it, but I find it fascinating, are the NFTs. And the NFTs in the CPG category, and how there are brands that haven't even launched yet, but they are selling NFTs to get the capital to launch their brand. So they're doing, this seed raise with their consumer audience, but they're also building a sense of mystique within, I get this NFT and I'm going to ultimately get this new product, but I'm going to be the first to know. And then when it launches, I'm going to be the first one to try it because I've already pre-invested in this brand. It's kind of like the new, crowd share side of investing.
Yeah. Oh, right.
The Kickstarters, yes, thank you. That's kind of how I think, but you're getting something a little bit different that feels, more current. It's based on crypto, and you get this little thing that's only yours and nobody else's, but you're also now invested in the brand and you're interested in what they're doing, and you're kind of looped into their whole advertising channel. That's the most fascinating thing I've seen. I have not been sucked in enough to get an NFT for one of the brands, but I am watching them closely because there is just going to be such a close parallel between NFTs and CPG and how they're working together. It's going to be fascinating to watch. So I think there's a lot of cool brands out there that are emerging that haven't even come to market yet, that are selling on technology first before the product even comes to market.
Yeah, and I think with a lot of these things, there's that initial, you keep hearing something over and over again, and it's interesting, but you don't necessarily understand what it is, which I think certainly mass market, that's what NFTs are.
NFTs to me are like the total intangible. Yeah. It's like I got a balloon of air.
Right.
Cool.
But in the same
what
way
do I do
that
with it?
We have profile photos, we have intangible objects that someone else can use your same Facebook photo on your Facebook, right? Or some people, I think I use the same photo. I use the same photograph of myself and my dog for LinkedIn, Facebook, everything. Where in part, that is,
at least you're consistent.
Anyone could use that, but that is my identity. And when you think of gamers online, it's not a unique idea, and I do think that a lot of people who aren't necessarily as a part of those communities, like whether it's gaming or something, like in some level, we've often collected digital things that, yes, they could be copied, whether it's like a video game skin that you spent actually a lot of money on. I guess I go back and forth on it, where I haven't really, like, I'm familiar with, like, I think like it's not Bored Apes, but there's like the Breakfast Club, where I think they have an NFT for a CPG brand.
Oh no, they are. There's the Fat Apes.
Yeah.
There's the fat apes, and then there's the Bored Apes too.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. No, and I've seen a few specific for just CPG, and I will say I am nerdy enough to definitely be interested in having an open mind to try to understand how this can be interesting beyond just sort of the initial, we'll call it, spike in just general interest and intrigue in something that most of us don't understand, versus what actually kind of sticks.
I agree.
I mean, but I guess what it also got me thinking of is like having something in like the physical world. You show up to a restaurant so often that they name a meal after you, right? Where you buy the same meal and it's slightly off.
Has that happened?
Not for me personally. But I know people who, again, going back to Maine, small town, where like I think there's like Boynton McKay, Camden. I think they named something after it wasn't Jack Churchill, but he's gone enough that I'm sure they've named something after him. But where they've named things after patrons, which again, it's I don't know. I'm trying to think through and just again pulling back to like tapping into your experience. Like, what are ways and things that you've seen maybe around loyalty or membership, like loyalty programs online, that have actually been compelling? Besides the points, like that, I mean, like the airline miles, right?
I mean, you like getting something for nothing. Yeah. And I mean, if you're already, then I think that it kind of comes back to, again, mapping out your ultimate customers and the rewards and the points and reviews. Leave a review. You can get 15% off, as we've all seen, get 15% off by giving us your email address and now your cell phone, because we want to text message you. You know, I don't really think that's a loyalty piece, but that's how you're getting your discount. So then you're looped into their system. You know, the points are interesting, but again, I feel like then the onus is on the customer to use them. And if you're not engaged in that product, it's really for nothing. You know, it's the ones that engage the consumer the most. And I think you can do the most loyalty when you already have a loyal base of customers to test it on. Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, the airlines are great because you're going to get a free flight out of it. You're going to get actually something big, versus I now have to make 8 more purchases to get $5 off.
Right.
I do love Goldbelly, though. Goldbelly's reward system is one that has worked for me, and I definitely buy into, especially, you know, COVID and everything else. And I love food. So being able to have that delivered to my house, that their rewards, their point system was a really good one.
What is it?
And it does incentivize me to go back, because it's a money back. So I can apply my points and get $50 off my order, which has been great, because if I had a big order, say it was for my team or for a client, and then I can go in and be like, oh, I can get a whole meal for my family, and it's nothing, because their point system and rewards is actually a good reward. It's a $25, $50, $100 off. And I don't have to meet a minimum. I don't have to meet a cap. It's just value for me purchasing over and over again, not having me jump through hoops to get that loyalty. They respond, or they acknowledge that the loyalty is there because you've bought multiple times and you've spent a certain amount of money, that they're going to give you that money back. And it's a good amount.
And is the meaningful...
So I guess it's that honesty. It's the ones that I feel like I don't have to work really hard for.
And is it that the benefit is more than $5? Is it that... I guess what I'm trying to distinguish is like, is it that it's such a meaningful number, right? As opposed to $5, it's $50. Yeah.
Exactly. Or I've seen others where it's like, oh, congratulations, you can get a $5 Starbucks gift card. It's like, well, I don't want that. I want money back.
Yeah.
I don't want something else that then makes more work for me to do. And I think that comes back to, maybe it's our innate laziness, but I don't want more work. I want to know that I already love this product, and I'm buying again, and oh, you're rewarding me in real time with something that I can really use on this order, or it's a free gift because you know that it's my second order. I mean, sometimes I see those if it's a repeat order. I get an email that says, thank you for supporting us again. You know, we'd love to offer you X or on a next order. That is nice. They're acknowledging that you are back again. And I think that's what I do like. And I know that's what I like about the Goldbelly side is that they don't have to send me an email, but they acknowledge the multiple orders because I have an account with them. I get great emails that I can ignore, or I can buy, you know, Run DMC's, you know, fried chicken. It's great. And then I can get $50 off. So those the rewards that are actually rewards are the ones that work.
Got it. Well, awesome. I mean, so are
there any that you've seen that have been like really impactful?
I mean, I've seen a lot of the free gifts on sort of like the, you know, every X number of purchases you get like a free gift.
But you have to want that gift.
Right.
That's
well,
the problem.
Is
like, is
I
it
guess
something
that
that you
goes
really
back to the
want?
problem with me is I generally don't want more things, unless they're fortunes.
Unless it's got a fortune in it.
I mean, it's almost like I'd rather have a free month of Spotify or something that I'm already using. I guess it's not necessarily relevant to the brand. But, you know, I guess what I kind of struggle with is if I don't necessarily want to be a part of the membership community of my favorite soft drink, right? Like, what do I have in common with other people who drink my drink? There's exceptions to that, I'm sure, for other people, but maybe the closest thing that I would have is like I'm a bit of a productivity nerd. And so if like I have a very like special souped up keyboard that I personalized, and it's very colorful because I like the way that I like the sound of the clickety click. I've tried a million different keyboards. And so like that actually in a weird way would be like if one of the perks was to be able to basically talk to like what are other tools that you've used or ways that you've sort of created a more comfortable like office or workspace. That would be interesting. I guess where I do struggle is for as much as I love CPG and I love food, like physical products and these brands and e-commerce, I do struggle a little bit with the intangible value. Like in part because I'm trying to help and understand and help other brands think this through. And as an engineer, I'm trying to think through what can we do to really provide something that's actually meaningful to consumers and not just, again, something that is free but not necessarily valued.
Yeah, you want to provide value.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's that balance of is it noise or is it value?
Yeah, it's almost like
And I think that's what brands have to weigh when they're looking at subscriptions or rewards or anything like that is it noise or is it value to your consumer?
Yeah. Well, I would say is there anything else that has come to mind that we haven't covered that you wanted to talk about coming into this?
I think we've covered a lot of different things and a few random things as well.
Definitely a few random things. I'll take full credit and apologize for that. One question I like to ask is how, like, do you have like one big ask? Like for anyone listening, is there something that could make or change your business? It could even be personal. It doesn't have to be business related. But like just the fact that, you know, people listening, if there's something that someone potentially could help you with or something that you're looking for, what would be your big ask?
Oh, my big ask. You know what? I love relationships. So being able to talk with people about their brand or an opportunity or be introduced to someone really interesting is my big ask. I learned so much from other people and having conversations like this, and especially in my business and kind of everything that I've learned. In some ways, I want to pass that forward as much as I can, but I also want to learn from other people, especially, you know, other women in the space too, in the CPG space. So my big ask is if there's somebody just amazing or cool out there that you know that is worth a conversation, who knows, that could change my life. I don't know, but it's kind of putting the power into the universe.
Yeah.
No, there's not one big client that would change my day tomorrow. It's more the relationships I have along the way and really meeting some cool, impactful powerful people that are really good at what they do.
Yeah. Any specific areas? Like I'm thinking like marketing, growth.
Oh, I love the CPG category,
Okay.
but brand owners, business builders, it doesn't have to be in food. I just happen to love that category and love talking about it.
I was going to say, I noticed that you and Ahmed already know each other, which is a small world because you guys were commenting on each other on LinkedIn.
Yes, yeah, yep, we're gonna chat next week, which I'm excited
That's
about.
awesome. Because I was going to say, that might be someone that you should talk to, but you already know her. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can people find out more about Pulp and Wire and yourself online?
Yeah, so if you can remember my name and spell it out, you can find
I'll
me
put
on
that in the show
LinkedIn or
notes.
LinkedIn under Taja Dockendorf.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show
Excellent.
notes.
And then I'm in Instagram at same thing, and pulpandwire.com.
Yeah.
It's a great place to find us also.
Yeah, awesome. And that's pulp and then andwire.com.
All spelled
Yeah.
out correct, yes.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And yeah.
It has been my
Oh,
pleasure.
well, thank you.
I'm going to have to find you some fortune cookies. So
Awesome.
maybe you'll
launch
see a big
brand
bag of fortune
that
cookies on
has
your
the
doorstep.
fortunes in the bottom of the beer, and I swear I'll start drinking beer again.
It could be possible. Yeah. Maybe if there's a QR code that switches
Right.
out a little fortune every time. I'll work on that for you.
Thank you.
Excellent.